It's time for Promoter 101, the podcast, hosted by Steiny.
Hey, this is Wayne Forte from Entourage Talent in New York, and I'll be a guest on Promoter 101 at Polestar Live. Come on down and see us.
Welcome to episode 7 of Promoter 101. I'm your host, Dan Steinberg, but you can call me Steiny.
And I'm Luke Pierce. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners out there from Promoter 101. We're coming off the end of this holiday here and celebrating a little bit. Great to have a little downtime. How was your Thanksgiving, Dan?
It was terrific. And yours, Luke?
Not too bad. I had to travel a little bit here in Dallas, Texas for a few shows this weekend, but I'm very, very excited to have at least a couple days off. Why don't we jump into the news, Dan? Slow week here on the shortened week for the music business. We're going to break down a few segments here. Let's start with this first order of business. Incredibly sad this week. One of my favorite rappers, Kanye West, came on a stage last week in Sacramento. He performed 2 songs. He went on a 45-minute tirade where he bashed Jay-Z and Beyonce and then claimed his allegiance to Donald Trump, and then he left the stage. And then days later, Live Nation, who had been promoting the entire St. Pablo tour, announced that Kanye would cancel the remaining dates on this tour. The estimated damage, as been reported by Billboard and Polestar, is up to being $30 million. It's about 300,000 tickets for seemingly nothing, no reason. I would love to hear your take on this, Dan. There's obviously a lot of news swirling in the insurance world about Kanye. What's going to happen with that money? Is Live Nation going to go down for the entire 27 million in tickets? What's going to happen here? Let's break this down a little bit.
It really depends if they're self-covering the tour, if there's a legitimate medical reason that the tour's not happening, or if it's just a rock star being a rock star and having a case of, I don't feel like being the guy right now. He's always in the middle of controversy, and no one really knows yet what's coming. I mean, he was hospitalized. They're saying he pulled some crap with the staff, but who knows what's for the sake of insurance and what's real. I have a feeling this is going to pan out in real-time press over the next couple of months, and we're going to see how this plays out.
I guess the teaching example I've seen used by Billboard and a few others has been the comparison to the Lady Gaga tour Born This Way, which in 2013, I don't know if you remember this, Gaga fell down on stage. She hurt herself. It was something related to her hip. She ended up having a surgery. She had to cancel the tour and refund more than $25 million in ticket sales. But Kanye, they haven't really given a reason yet for this, Dan. There's, like you said, there's probably not been a professional diagnosis by a third-party examiner, and while I think everyone cares a lot about the health and well-being of an artist, there's certainly cause for pause here at this time. Is there a legitimate reason to have canceled this tour? Was it some legitimate medical reason? No one's really clear on the facts yet.
Well, with a Gaga or a Pink or a Britney Spears or even a Madonna, you have dance numbers that are highly needed for them to be able to be emotional and hips to work. But in the case of Guns N' Roses, when Axl got hurt, or with Dave Grohl with the Foo Fighters, they would probably have even had legitimate grounds to cancel, but these guys could play their shows anyway, and the fans just wanted to see them. So I think in the case of Kanye, had he had to sit down to perform these shows, it still would have worked, and the fans would have just been happy to be there. Obviously, hip-hop shows are a little bit less performer style on stage. I mean, there are moments where you just see him alone on stage. So if he's stationary without a band moving around him, it's not nearly as cool as a Guns N' Roses or a Foo Fighters, but the shows probably could have played if he wanted them to play. Who knows what his mental sound is. And for God's sakes, we're talking about Kanye West. To say that he's batshit crazy is a given. The things that he's pulled in the past lead up to him doing stupid, odd things that keep him in the media. He doesn't have a composure of a Jay-Z or some of the other well-handled rock stars in the industry. He's more of the early day Axl Rose when it comes to, you never know what you're going to get with Kanye. And I think that's half of the reason he's such a big rock star or hip-hop star, as the case may be.
I'll say this. I saw the show. I actually saw it on the night that the Cubs won the World Series in Los Angeles at the Forum. Is one of the shows that he didn't change or cancel out in the Forum. The show was absolutely fucking incredible. It was incredible visionary level production. He gave a bit of a tirade during that. I think everybody kind of expects that at this point. Social media is just littered with fan videos of Kanye West blowing off steam for 15 minutes in the middle of a set. LA was no different. But to do what he did to the fans in Sacramento is certainly a little disappointing. And these rumors you talk about in hospitalization and his mental health is certainly in question at this point too. So if the guy has a legitimate health problem and some mental stuff he needs to work through, I hope he finds that kind of help. But in the meantime, we're going to have this giant bag of money hanging in the air for a while, and it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Well, I mean, the question at the end of the day is, did the fans leave happy? And most likely the fans in Sacramento did not leave happy. And on top of that, it comes down to, when you go to a show with someone of this caliber that's known for this stuff, like Courtney Love was back when she was doing doll parts with Hole, are you expecting this kind of shit? And is that half the reason you go to the show? Now, you like Kanye, and I don't. I think he's an absolute piece of shit. So we're going to have different sides here. I mean, his lyrics are sweet. There's no question. He knows what he's doing. But at the same time, he's fucking nuts, Luke.
He is crazy, and to the point now where, he's maybe being hospitalized for it. He's a guy pulled in several different directions, and I'm not going to pretend like and use the line that everyone's been talking about, the exhausting level of tours. I guarantee you Kanye West is being taken to and from places, driven by personal cars with several personal assistants on the road. This is not like the exhausting, grinded out van and, U-Haul trailer kind of tour. That's not how Kanye's experiencing it out there too. But at the same time, a lot of incredible artists are haunted by some really serious mental things. And if that's one of the cases for Kanye, that's a legitimate reason to pull this tour down in my mind. But we'll have to let some 30-part examiner make that call. And I'm sure things will be uncovered in the next coming weeks as the trades report on it.
Well, if there's anything to be said, it will be in the press because people can't stop talking about him. And whether you like him or you hate him, he is certainly a press magnet.
100%. Let's keep moving on. James Corden, he's going to host the 2017 Grammys. He's going to replace LL Cool J, who's hosted the event for the last 5 years. Dan, is this going to make the average fan more or less likely to watch the biggest night in music?
I think people are ready for a change. We all love LL. He's absolutely great at it. That's why they keep having him back. So I'm not sure if it's a change for the good or the bad, but let's give James a chance and let's see what he does. Let's give him a little bit of room here.
I certainly love the fact that the guy that's hosting Carpool Karaoke is going to be hosting the Grammys. Brings a younger, hipper edge to things, and I think that's definitely needed. There's certainly some politics at play with CBS. Obviously, they want to have one of their own talents hosting the event, and that it totally makes sense. They'll do a ton of promos, ton of leads in with the younger audience out there. I think it's a great thing for the show in general.
I was kind of hoping for the cast of Big Brother myself, but that's just me.
Irving's getting sued. The Radio Music License Committee has filed a suit against Irving Azoff's Global Rights Management, the for-profit performing rights organization that Irving has organized and representing artists like Pharrell and some other major hitters. Here's the deal on this. There's like most music is licensed through BMI or ASCAP, which are regulated by antitrust decrees that limits the amount of money that the companies can charge to license a single song. Irving is out there, signing up a ton of acts and a ton of people signing into his company that can negotiate fees that are much higher than what you're getting charged for ASCAP and BMI, which has a pretty big effect on the outcome of multiple parts of the business, radio being one of them, but live music being another component of it as well, too. Dan, you're paying ASCAP and BMI and CSAC fees each night as a promoter out there. How do you feel about this, the future of for-profit PROs?
I think Irving Azoff is an American treasure, and we should all do whatever he says, Luke.
It's a very politically well-done answer there, Dan. I respect it.
I doubt you respect it, but that's all I'm saying on this topic.
Fair enough. I'll just say this. Interestingly enough here, Irving did hire Dan Petrocelli, who's famous enough for defending O.J. Simpson in a civil case, as well as Jeff Skilling, the former head of Enron. And more recently, he also includes Donald Trump in the class action suit of Donald Trump against the students or former students of Trump University. So Irving's lawyered up in a pretty spectacular way.
Is that the guy that played Travolta on the TV show?
Didn't catch that. I definitely need to go back and rewatch the People versus O.J. Simpson.
Can't go wrong with anybody that was either a Schwimmer or Travolta in that cast. It'd be great.
Fair enough.
A Day to Remember won their lawsuit against Victory Records. This has been playing out for a little while, and congrats to the guys for actually beating a label for once. Well done, gentlemen.
Enjoy the $4 million. That's it for the news. Let's head into Promoter 101 tweets. This is the segment of the podcast where we break down Dan's Rambling and Musings on his Twitter account. If you're not following Dan on Twitter, he is at the Jew. Start it off here. When you realize just how much Canadian business you really do, because they're still working up north on Thanksgiving. Hashtag Promoter101.
I noticed my emails just kept coming in on Thursday, and as I took a closer look, I noticed they were all coming in from my associates in Canada. And it really made me realize just how much business we actually do with Canadian bands and Canadian co-promoters and venues. It's a real big part of our business now because those guys have to work on Thanksgiving. I think it's maybe time we all sync up our turkey days because theirs is somewhere in October, I believe.
You're right about that. When you and the tour manager wind up fixing all the formula errors in the venue's Excel settlement sheet just to finish settlement. Hashtag Promoter101.
This is an ongoing headache. People may have a master where they build for their settlement sheets, and sometimes they're very green at this. Then you catch them at settlement because they screwed up their formulas using a calculator in front of their Excel sheets, and it's taking forever. So the other night, we could not wait any longer to get settlement done and took the sheet, reworked all of the formulas so they accounted correctly, and then went back and fixed the master sheet. So hopefully this wouldn't be a problem for everybody else moving forward. But learning how to use Excel is an important thing in this industry.
I've painfully watched one too many settlements where people actually type in a number into an Excel and then add the next number to it on a calculator off the computer, then type that new number into place. I can't tell you the number of theaters and venues that I've seen actually do that. It's incredibly painful to watch.
Yeah, this is one thing where taking a class is worthwhile.
When someone calls me for help with a benefit that is really only wanted to hang out backstage at a show, hashtag Promoter101.
This has become a thing where we get calls constantly for helps for some really good causes, and I never mind helping a really good cause. If the artist calls or a venue calls or a manager, an agent call, or even a friend, and they have an idea and they want to help out, and they want to use a concert to create revenue for a good cause, that's fine. But a lot of times it's not about the cause. It's about somebody just wanting to get close to their favorite act backstage. And most benefits don't actually make money. It's really about pressing the flesh with some rock stars that you really have no reason being near. So at the end of the day, if you're really not looking to hang out with the act and you're doing something great, it's one thing. But if you're just looking to rub elbows and starfuck, don't do it in the name of charity. It's not cool. This week, our first interview is with rock and roll legendary manager Bill Siddons, known for his work with The Doors, Crosby Stills Nash, Pat Benatar, Van Morrison, and so many others. Joining us on Promoter 101, we have an icon with us, the guy that made The Doors happen, the guy behind the guy, the manager, Mr. Bill Siddons. Welcome to Promoter 101.
Wow, I finally got to be on this legendary show. I am so excited.
5 weeks into legendary. All right, we'll take that. So we got to ask you, let's just jump in with The Doors. How did that come to be?
My best friend went away to college and went to Cal Western in San Diego, and there he met Ronnie Krieger, and they were good buddies down there, and I went down and visited him, met Ronnie, and when Rich moved back to L.A. after drinking his way out of Cal Western, he came to Cal State Long Beach, where I was going to school. And he kept asking me about going out and helping him with his band on the weekend, and it didn't happen for me. I wasn't very interested. And one day he called and said, "Hey, we got a trip to San Francisco. You can ride up with us and get a hotel room, and we get a free weekend in San Francisco." And I said, "No, I got school tomorrow. I can't go." And I hung up, and my mom said, "Did you just pass on a free trip to San Francisco to go to school?" And I said, I think you're right, Ma. I think maybe I should go to San Francisco. So I called them back. We went up. And while we were unloading the van, I was going up the back stairs, about 50 stairs at the Avalon Ballroom, with an amp in each hand. And when I got to the top of the stairs, the band was standing there. They introduced themselves, and Robbie said, "Do you have a summer job?" I said, "No, why?" He said, "Well, we need somebody. You want to work for us this summer?" Yeah, sure, because this was mid-May 67. And so I kind of looked around going, well, why is he asking me? And I turned around, and Ronnie and Rich were coming up the stairs on either end of one amplifier. I had one in each hand. They figured that was 4 times as efficient. They hired me. So I became their instant roadie. I didn't know how to set up a drum kit. I didn't know how to plug an amp in. I didn't know how to tune a guitar, but I learned on the job. So that was the beginning, and 6 months later, they fired their Hollywood-type managers, and actually one was a real estate agent, and the other went on to actually be Neil Diamond's production manager and tour producer, Sal Bonifetti. But they fired them in December, hired me to be the manager, and I said I couldn't do it unless they'd pay my draft evasion costs. They said they would.
So tell us more about the draft card. That's fascinating. What happened there?
The nation was going to the lottery system, and I knew that was coming up. And I also knew that I would not kill somebody at the instructions of my adopted country, because I'm Canadian, and I'm not going to kill anybody ever. I feel like it sometimes, but bottom line was, the people we worked with, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I asked Beth, the girl that we coordinated with, said, do you know anybody who can help me with the draft? And she said, absolutely. His name's Bill Smith. I'll give you his phone number. She went and got the phone number, gave me his phone number. I called, set a meeting. Rich and I went, and there was one sentence exchange that made the meeting clear. I said, how many cases have you handled? He said, 304. No, I think it was 404. And I said, well, how many of those guys went in the Army? He said, 3. I said, where do I sign? And hired him.
So it's 1967. You're, 18 or 19 years old at this time?
And in December, they asked me to be the manager.
It's May 1967. You're in the Avalon Ballroom. You're seeing Jim Morrison for the first time. What's going through your head?
Well, I was stunned because I had seen Johnny Mathis at the Greek and one other act like that my girlfriend at the time wanted to see. And this was something that was completely alien to me, and I just sat there mesmerized. And when Jim went into Horse Latitudes, when a still sea conspires in armor, and her sullen and aborted currents breed tiny monsters, true sailing is dead. And I just went, oh my God, a movie started in my head, and the whole time he recited that poem, I saw a movie in my head. And I just said, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
What made them stand out and made them such a success?
A number of things. First is, there was no one in the world like Jim Morrison. There was no poet as good as Jim Morrison. Second is that from the beginning, the mandate was, we headline, we don't support. And so everyone that saw them went to see them. They weren't just thrown in there. And I think that made a big difference in the perception of them from the beginning, that they were a headliner.
Now, whose idea was that?
Maybe it was Jim and Ray. I don't know. It was just when I got involved, that was the deal. I got approached about Woodstock, and I asked the guys, and they said, no, we don't want to do it. And I said, you really should. This is going to be really different. I knew that much. But they got a lot of pressure to do it, and they just said, no, we don't want to be part of a jumble. We want to be something that you focus on. And they wouldn't do it.
Who was Jack Holtzman?
Jack Holtzman was the owner and founder of Elektra Records.
Ah.
Hendrix and the Doors were probably the two most intense acts of that era. We toured with the Airplane in Europe, and it just wasn't the same experience. They were fun, but that was hippie music. We were not hippie music. We were earth-shaking poetry music. It kind of scared the shit out of everybody.
It's yourself, Jim Morrison, Rich. You are all, maybe 20 years old.
I was the youngest manager in the music business for many years. Me and Bill Thompson were buddies who managed the Airplane. And he always complained that I was, 6 months younger than him, and he wanted to be the youngest manager. But the business allowed that in those days.
So who was the agent for the act at the time?
Todd Schiffman at APA. He also went on to manage Iron Butterfly, Loggins and Messina, and a number of other acts in partnership with Larry Larson. And they were called Schiffman and Larson, and known as Shifty and Larceny, but just for fun. They were good guys.
So essentially, at the end of the day, your mom made history. Had you not gotten that van on her pushing, the Doors may never have been as big.
It wouldn't have happened.
Your mom should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, she was a very wise woman, and every friend I had growing up wanted her to be their mom. So I was very fortunate in that.
So who else did you wind up working with throughout the years? I mean, obviously it's not just about the Doors.
I worked with the Doors from May 67 to October 72, which was 2 records without Jim. And then they formed a new band called the Butts Band. We made a deal with Blue Thumb. David Geffen called me and said, hey, Bill, I want you to take a meeting with Elliot Roberts. I said, okay, why? He said, just go talk to him. I said, okay. So Elliot called me. I went and met with Elliot Roberts. And at that moment in time, I had made a deal with Chris Blackwell to be his U.S. office, basically. So I was going to partner with Chris Blackwell. And Blackwell kind of put it on hold for a month. I called Elliot Monday and took the job and worked for Elliot for 6 months, managed America and managed the band and Souther Hillman Furay for Elliot. And by the end of the summer, I could tell that Elliot didn't really want a partner or a right-hand man. He just wanted someone to cover the business he signed. All he really cared about was Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. And me and Ron Stone were to take care of the other bands. In fact, my first day on the job, Elliot said, okay, here's an address. Go over, you're going to meet America and listen to their rehearsal. And if they call me, you're fired. So, oh, that's interesting.
Did the call happen?
Of course not. I did great with them. The problem was I got a call while in Germany on tour with them in Europe from Elliot telling me I had to come back to the States the next day because he just signed the band and he needed me to handle the band. And I kind of argued on the phone with him saying, hey, I'm in the middle of this. We're making real progress. I've finally gotten them to actually have a show. I really can't do that. And he said, no, that's what you're doing. Get on the plane tomorrow. So I had to tell the band that I was leaving, and they went, okay, we're leaving Elliot, because they had that experience with John Hartman and Harlan Goodman. They left, and then Irving Azoff took them over, and Irving left with the Eagles.
The most abandoned band in the world, huh?
They were great. I loved working with them, and I made a difference for them, and I was actually really proud of the work I did in a few short months. But in any case, that lasted 6 months, and then I got a call from Peter Golden, who was running the music department at William Morris, and he said, look, I got a situation here. I'm working with Van Morrison, but he doesn't have a manager. He doesn't want a manager, but he really needs a manager. Would you consider doing it and not being called the manager? And I said, Van Morrison? I'd shine his shoes. I don't care. So I basically took over Van Morrison and left Elliot in the fall. And then I started my partnership with Peter Golden, and we signed Crosby, Stills, Nash, Poco, Jesse Cullen Young, David Lindley, and he had Jackson Brown.
It was amazing.
Bill, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about about 1971 and Jim's death. Taking this back for a second. You were the first person to hear about it in the States. What was that day like?
I got a call at about 4:30 in the morning from the label manager of Elektra in London, and the phone rang. It's essentially the middle of the night, and my wife sits bolt upright and says, "Jim's dead." I went, "What?" And I answered the phone, and Clive Selwood told me that he'd had 3 different journalists call him from Paris saying that they were told that Jim was dead. Was it true? I told him I didn't know anything, and I would call him as soon as I did, and I called the apartment a few times, didn't get anywhere, went back to sleep, got up, called again until I got Pam to answer around noon, got on a 4 o'clock plane and flew over to Paris to help her out in handling everything that needed to be dealt with. And then did a funeral, and we decided, because of the crap that went on with Janice and Jimmy's death, the media circus, we just said, no, we're going to bury him before the media knows. And so we told the American embassy that he was an American poet. That was it. They didn't know. And same with the French authorities, and managed to fly back to LA before anybody knew, and went straight to my PR guy's office, Bob Gibson, and met with Robert Hilburn, and I think it was Frank Barron, for them to write the press release. Did the interview, did the press release, and that was a pretty heavy period.
I can't even imagine.
Well, I was grown up then. I was 20 or 21,
So the band must have had a unique relationship with him. I mean, he was clearly artistic and difficult. How did the guys get along with him while he was going through the bigger success moments of his period?
Mixed. Ray was Machiavelli, trying to, manipulate and control everything. John was I'd say he had more traditional values and was, concerned about how things looked and how people responded. Robbie, we described as our in-house space cadet, who wasn't so emotional about it. And over time, Jim not showing up to a show, Jim showing up too drunk to work, not finishing sets, really took its toll. And the relationship, instead of being the soul brother relationship that it began, kind of became more of a, we got to make this work somehow relationship. And there were probably 3 separate occasions that I can claim credit for keeping the band together.
So Oliver Stone made a movie about the whole thing. How close did he have it? Did he know what he was talking about?
The movie was proof to me of the difference between a documentary and a Hollywood movie. When I saw the movie, I was upset, angry. It was so wildly inaccurate in many of the portrayals. Each scene was based upon something that actually happened, but that was pretty much it. Then Oliver took Hollywood liberties and made a Hollywood movie. And I started laughing. He said, "What are you laughing about?" And I said, "I finally get it. This is a Hollywood movie. It has nothing to do with reality." And that's how I learned to accept it.
So after the Doors, you've got a storied career. You've got Crosby, Stills and Nash, Van Morrison, Pat Benatar. You've worked through some...
And Robert Palmer.
Some absolute legends through the years. What's it like, as you're still involved in the music business, to transition into a completely new era of music?
My attitude has been that the music overall hasn't changed that much. The relationship with the audience overall hasn't changed that much. But ultimately, the joy is working with great artists and helping them do the best work they can possibly do and be more successful. And that's what gets me up in the morning.
So speaking of what gets you up in the morning, you're married to one of the biggest comics in the world. You have been with Elaine Boozler for years. How did the two of you...
21. I think next week's our 22nd anniversary. Is that possible?
Your career's old enough to drink. That's awesome. Your marriage. So how did the two of you guys come into the same circle?
Like the rest of my life, relatively accidentally. I had a benefit. Crosby, Stills and Nash did a number of benefits in their career. And we had a benefit we were doing in Washington, D.C. the night before Clinton was inaugurated. We were walking through the hotel lobby. Graham saw Elaine and said, "Hey, Elaine, what are you doing?" She said, "Oh, I'm just hanging out here. I'm going to go over in a little while." I said, "Well, how are you getting there?" She said, "I'll take a bus." He said, "No, you're coming with us." And he basically drug her into the limo. And I didn't know her at all. And everywhere we went.
And she was extremely successful already, right?
Oh, yeah. She was a very successful comic. So I knew who she was, but I didn't know her work. And as we walked from the car into the inauguration, there's 500,000 people there. There was a lot of walking involved. Every 50 feet, somebody yelled out, "Hey, Elaine, you're great. Hey, Elaine, I love you. Hey, Elaine, you were great last night." And I'm walking with Graham Nash, who I think's, one of the biggest rock stars on the planet. No one recognizes him. And what? Everybody recognizes this comic. And I must say, at least 30, 40 times between the car and sitting down, people yelled out to her. And she really laid me out a couple times. One is we're walking up the path, and by the 10th guy yelling out, "Hey, Elaine, you were great last night," she turns around to me and says, "I didn't fuck anybody last night." And it just put me away. And then we sat down and the inauguration started. And Maya Angelou, she starts her poem. "A tree, a river, and a rock." And Elaine leans over and says, "Go into a bar." I fell off my chair. So, she just kept blowing my mind with how fast she was. What an incredible brain she had. We had our first date that night and went out to 2 or 3 different big gala events where she was recognized all the time.
So when did you wind up becoming not only her husband, obviously, which happened obviously 22 years ago almost, how did the management thing come to be?
In November of 94, and it was January of 83 that we met. And she was working with another manager, and she was not happy because he never called her. And I kept trying to tell her, you need to call him. You got to call him every week and tell him what you're doing and give him a reason to think about you and look for opportunities for you. She had no interest in that. I called the manager, and he said, well, she should call me. And I went, yeah, but you should call her too. It didn't work. So ultimately, I said, look, I'll take care of handling the tour stuff, but I don't know anything about comedy. I don't know anything about television. I don't want to be responsible for that. She said, fine. And little by little, that's the way it worked out, that I actually became the manager. Truth is, I don't consider myself her manager. I consider myself her partner in business.
Bill, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. And as we close it out today, give us one closing thought about getting involved and getting ahead in this crazy music business.
Actually, one of the things I am internally proudest about is that a number of my interns have successful careers in the business now. And I really enjoy being a mentor and helping. And I remain friends with a number of them. And my experience is that if you really want to do something in music, and probably in any business, you just do it. You don't wait for somebody to hire you. You show up, and you just keep showing up until they say, yeah, okay, you can go push that broom over there. And then you do that, and you pick up as much information and build relationships and find a way in the door. You know, my partner now, Jeremy Rosen, has a great story of that exactly happening. He wanted to work for Russell Simmons. He had done a number of shows as an AP that Russell had acts on, and he saw Russell, said, I want to work with that guy. And he showed up at his office twice a week for a month and a half, until Russell came out and saw him and said, why do I always see you here? He said, because I want to work for you. He worked for Russell for 6 years while he got his law degree and became a successful lawyer. It's that kind of tenacity and persistence that makes all the difference in my experience.
Pretty sure that's considered stalking these days.
It is kind of stalking, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Bill, thanks so much for joining us on Promoter 101, an icon and a legend, Mr. Bill Siddons. Thank you.
And thank you.
This week, we're lucky to have one of the best production managers in the world. You know him from the Black Keys, Empire of the Sun, and Major Lazer. He won Polestar's Tour Manager of the Year a couple years back, and he is considered the best of the best. Please welcome Jim Runge. Promoter 101. Today we're joined by legendary road manager from Emperor of the Sun, Major Lazer, and the Black Keys. Please welcome Jim Runge. So you're the best of the best. You won Polestar Magazine's Road Warrior of the Year Award. There's no bigger than that.
Your first nomination was 2013. You won that year as well, right?
Yeah, that was the first year I won, and I was nominated last year, and then and lost to Opie, which is just to be on the same page with Opie is pretty amazing. And then this year I'm nominated again.
It was an incredible year for Black Keys. Obviously, you actually had the special opportunity for Pat Carney from that band to hand you the award at the award ceremony. What was that like?
Yeah, well, also that year too. I mean, it wasn't just the Black Keys. That was my golden year, as I refer to it, because I also was doing Wilco and the Replacements reunion that year. So I had all three of them listed, which was how much cooler pedigree could I have than have those three bands on my resume for that year, you know? So having Patrick up there was a surprise. That actually, a great story about that is John Peets, who most people know is the Black Keys manager, and Eric Church, and is one of the nicest guys in the industry. My family had come up to Nashville to be with me for the award ceremony, and we're all friends with John's family, and we're all get together at the office, and we're all hanging out, and John comes up to me and goes, "Congratulations!" And I'm like, "John, there's no way I'm going to win this, but thanks. I appreciate your that, but it's really nice of you to say that." And then he looks at me and goes, and like with this look on his face, which of course I was so naive and insecure I didn't get it. He just looks at me and goes, "Oh, of course you're not going to win." Which I was like, later I went to my son's mother and I'm like, that was the weirdest thing. Like, John is usually so positive and supportive. And when I told him that I probably wouldn't win, he agreed with me. Like, that's such a weird thing. And then I found out when Patrick was there and the management team was there, and I got, all of Q Prime had been in on this, and the plan had been for Patrick to do it. So everybody knew weeks before that I had won it. But I was just like so in denial about it. When John said that, I was like so disappointed. I'm like, man, John's usually so nice. And the fact that he just said that there's no way I'm going to win it. Like, I mean, I know there's no way I'm going to win it, but John doesn't say that. I say that.
So up until that moment they called your name, you had no idea you won, huh?
No, I had no clue. It was a complete, I had no, I was up against Opie and Jake, from U2. I just felt like, one of these things is not like the other. There's no way in hell I'm gonna win this. But it's really nice to be nominated. But which is what I say every year. Like last year was that way and Opie won it. This year I'm up against obviously Opie again. And I look at my thing and I look who I'm up against and I'm like, I don't know what. I think they just forgot to erase my name from the previous year because I really don't think I'm supposed to be up here again.
Clearly the best of the best think you're one of them. Even Stuart Ross was in the office the other day and talking about how great you were on the podcast. So clearly you are one of those guys.
Yeah, I heard him say that, and I also heard him, mention having my name with Gus Brand.
So let's go ahead and ask about the suits. You never show up to a gig without them. What's the deal with the fucking suits?
I don't know if you guys know Nick Close at all. Nick Close is a legendary guitar tech, stage manager. He was one of the guys in the van with Nirvana. I was with Sonic Youth for 18 years. We followed me to the Black Keys. Dan Auerbach really liked the suit. So, I convinced him. He started as Patrick's drum tech. Dan's like, you know what? I love the suit. Maybe we should just offer to buy the guys suits. And if they want to wear suits, we'll wear suits. So there's a period of time going into the first SNL that we did in 2011, I think, or 12. I went out and bought everybody suits for SNL. So everybody showed up that night at Saturday Night Live between the rehearsal and the taping. Everybody in the crew was wearing suits. And for a while, most of the crew was wearing it. Nick still doesn't for me. I had this revelation, what's going to make me stand out and what's going to make, and also too, I always had this feeling I always wore suit jackets. Even before I wore suits, I wore suit jackets. I dressed nice. And I grew up with the tour manager, and not to offend my fellow tour managers, but, with seeing tour managers in the 80s and 90s, they were white tennis shoes, cut off gym shorts, and dirty, a t-shirt that was too small, covered in food, that is the stereotypical dress of a tour manager. And I was we have manager on our names. We're the face of the band. We represent the band. It's kind of worked for me now. I'm kind of stuck with it. And I kind of enjoy, wearing them.
Pretty awesome to see a guy that, had his own punk rock band and came from the punk rock scene.
I don't know, Luke. You're pretty punk rock. I can totally see you wearing those boat shoes and pulling off the suit thing. What do you think? You got the vibe for it, right?
I've never owned a suit. I refuse to wear a suit. So my new thing is suits are punk rock. Because it's for me, there's nothing more rebellious than wearing a suit. And I got to call Joe Shanahan from the Metro called me a few years ago, and he goes, Jim, you're the funniest thing. There's a band here, and everybody, before they go on stage, they all put on suit jackets because they're all inspired by you, and I didn't even know who they were.
Jim and the Runges, that could be the best new punk band on the block.
That's right.
So what's the deal with Gus's Hot Chicken? It's your thing, right?
Yeah, I don't, what? I love fried chicken. So it's just kind of become this thing in Nashville and Austin. So I'm driving back and forth a lot. And I've always loved Gus's fried chicken. Chicken and fried chicken, I guess, is just what I'm known for. That and the suit, I guess. Yeah, not my work ethic or if I'm a tour manager, but they know me for the suit and fried chicken.
I want to talk about one amazing year in your life, which was 2010. This is the year that you took the gig with the Black Keys, the year that Brothers had come out in the Incredible album. That band went from clubs to arenas in the snap of a finger.
And I got a call to do the Keys, and I was like, it's kind of not where I'm being. It's clubs. It's 2 nights at First Avenue. It's doing 2,000 to 4,000, which is decent, but it's less than what I was doing. But I like the band, and until something better comes along, I'm not doing anything else. I'll do it. The record comes out, and all of a sudden we're number 3 behind the Glee record in the Rolling Stones reissue, and we've sold. I think they sold 70,000 or something, doubled what they even expected to do. Well, let's do a small little tour of Canada, and we're going to do arenas, and we're going to do big amphitheaters, and if it fails, no big deal. Nobody's going to notice. It's Canada, right? Nobody will notice. And we went from Molson Amphitheater in Toronto went on sale. We just put the lawn on sale, which is like 8,000, figuring 6 weeks, sell 8,000 tickets. It'll look good. We'll keep the grass open, but all the seats will be open. Within hours, all the seats are sold out. Next day, we put the lawn on sale. That sold out. And, that was something we were expecting. We'd maybe sell half of it in 6 weeks, and we sold all of it in 2 days.
Might have been a little stronger than you thought, huh?
It went like that for years. It's like we'd do something and underestimate it, and it would be like way better than what we even thought. We'd put something on sale, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's better than what we thought. It just was a continuous ride like that.
So let's talk about that for a minute. You're on the road. You know the stories better than most. Yeah. Do you have an opinion about Cameron Crowe's Showtime's version of Roadies? Is it real? I mean, have you even seen the show?
Some NPR station had come to me to preview it, and they sent me the first 3 episodes a couple of weeks before it came out, and we happened to have a day off with my crew in Michigan. So we crashed my room. We basically took the bed and threw it in the hallway and got a bunch of chairs and hooked up the computer, the TV, and watched the first 3 episodes. And by the end of it, we definitely had some drinks, and there were the TV was like covered in drinks by the end of it from people throwing their cups at it. To be honest with you, I have not watched it beyond those 3. I wanted to like it. The first time I watched it was like, yeah, it's not so bad. And the second time I watched it and said, I think you could pick the relationship. So like I said, I haven't watched it beyond the 3rd episode, and one day I will, but I haven't done that yet. But we don't do prayer circles. If anybody was skateboarding, especially the safety element of there's no way that a lot of that stuff would happen. And the person running the teleprompter, deciding what the set should be and quitting because the music, they don't feel the music anymore. It's I don't know anybody that cares about we're all happy if we work for a band whose music we like, but we prefer the paycheck and we don't really care.
So the idea of a road manager picking the opening act kind of falls a little bit out of the line, but you had to love that one, right?
Yeah, it's silly. It's our job to find it, to come up with people or bring our friends. Any road manager has friends anyways, especially friends in bands. That's ridiculous.
So do you have any backstage antics you can share with us?
Offhand, I really can't. I mean, I'd say it's 75% sheer boredom, 20% mind-blowing stress, and then 5% of situations that people would kill to be in. It's such a small little bit of it, but in a lot of ways, that's why we do it. I think for me, it's been more of the people I've become friends with.
Okay, can you tell us about going to Cuba?
Yeah.
With Major Lazer? It was just an amazing thing. One of the first American acts to go there. You produced this massive street show. What was that about?
You cross your fingers and pray, and I'm not a religious person, but there was definitely praying going on that day. I came into that was my first show.
I mean, the sound system could have been from fucking Radio Shack. You had to be running nuts worrying about the logistics.
No, it wasn't. And I did Brendan Hoffman, who was the tour director for Teamwork. He's the guy who ran that. So I was just kind of there more observing for that one. But I believe Brendan said the audio, which was the projection was there was 450 to 500,000 people at that show. And that's a massive amount of people. There was people as far as you could see, and up and down streets, around corners. I think Brendan said there were 16 different types of boxes for audio from so we actually had delays, which was amazing. But literally there were 16 different kinds of boxes hung all over the place. We went in the day before. We came in a couple days early just to see how it was. For some reason, they did have a decent video wall. They built the table for the risers. Basically, they built it and painted it, that day while we were standing there. And then we went out and bought some cloth to cover it in. The scariest part of it was the barricades they had were these rusty, literally if you kick them, they're bicycle rack, but even cheaper than bicycle racks that were rusted, and they basically just spray painted them white to make them look better and maybe make them stronger, I guess. And then that's all that was holding people back all the way back. There was no laws for safety, US, Europe, Australia, you put up racks in between to kind of keep the crowd pushes. There's something to stop it. You don't have that. If one person would have pushed or gotten out of control, it would have been, it was scary. And when it was a mini festival with local acts with Major Lazer headlining, there was one kind of band. It was, I think, just four guys with guitars that played before us. And for whatever reason, they quit 20 minutes before they were supposed to. So we panicked. The band is still at the hotel, which is just up the hill. But because there's so many people, literally you have to drive 20 minutes out of your way to get around back to the venue. And we're in a panic because if anybody gets starts freaking out or gets uncomfortable or something happens, there's no way to get to them and it's going to be a mess. And if they start getting anxious, we're in trouble. And luckily, we got the guys on there, literally got them in the building, gave them 5 minutes, got them on stage, and the show went off amazingly well. It was all great, but it was probably one of the scariest 10, 15 minutes I've had, just because it could have gone so wrong.
Well, I would say that there's about a million ways that situation could have played out to the adverse effect for things too. What goes through your head when situations like that happen, or even worse, when you think that your band's not going to get paid that night? How do you react? What happens?
You mean the promoter not having money, something in a situation like that, you mean? Or
clearly this isn't a Black Keys type of act.
Yeah,
your
no,
roots
of course,
are clearly started from your early days in the clubs. People are fighting from time to time.
Yeah.
It had to get really tough out there. How do you handle it when somebody's going to stiff you, not pay the act?
I do remember one show, actually, now that I think about it, when I was doing Bebel Gilberto and a promoter in LA, that actually I had to get the title for his car. That's the one time where I actually had him sign the title of his car over to me.
Was the car worth anything?
Oh yeah, no, it was like a Jaguar or something. It was a nice car.
This is now a second generation thing for you, right? Your son Zach is out there. He's got his own band. He's also a drum tech and kind of following your footsteps, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's worked for me. It's great. I mean, I'm a way better tour manager than I am a father, but I did give him a career.
Jim, I want to thank you for talking to us today on Promoter 101.
That was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 7 of Promoter 101. We appreciate every one of you out there listening. Please make sure you subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can follow Dan on Twitter at The Jew and follow me at W. Pierce. And make sure you follow both of us at Promoters 101.
Or you can email us at steiny@promoter101.net. Tell us anything you want. Tell us who we should have as a guest, a subject. Tell us what's bugging you about the industry, or what you really love. We're really hoping you help us write the next couple of shows, because, we're lazy and we want you to do our homework. Hey, thanks for watching Promoter 101. I guess you're listening, not watching. Anyway, we love you. Peace out. Have a great holiday.
Cheers.